There. That's better. Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, I'm fighting something here. Um, so that's why I'm a little late, and I apologize for that. I know Rosemary sent out the push notice probably about 15 minutes ago, and something came up, and so I was a little late getting here. So sorry about that. But yeah, there's lots of stuff going on. All right, we're up. We're in the high 700s, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Um, we'll keep this a little shorter tonight since we're getting a little bit later start. Good win for the Cats tonight. That, of course, terrific. Um, and so setting the stage for a game Saturday as Travis Perry comes home uh, and against Ole Miss. So, again, good job with the Cats tonight. So let's get to the weather. So you see it here. This is what we talked about tonight, our headlines. Shades of last January. So if you remember last January, started the beginning of the month there, like on the 5th or the 6th, we switched to just three of the best winter weeks you could imagine. But it also began with the winter concrete, which was a mixture of freezing rain, then snow, then some sleet, then more snow on top of that, and then bitterly cold. There's a lot of resemblance to that showing up, coming up here as we get you into the weekend, where we could get all that stuff together. And the end result is take that and magnify it from what we had in January, because this is a much bigger system. And so there are a lot of things in play. I was talking to my friend John Gordon, formerly with the Weather Service. He gave me a call this morning. And basically, we're just kind of comparing notes. He's thinking kind of some resemblance to 94, January of 94. So if you remember that was a historic Arctic outbreak and snow that basically paralyzed Kentucky for a few days. It also brought the state's record cold temperature. I don't see that coming, but I do see a lot of bitterly cold temperatures. So with all that, it's also an exceedingly complex scenario. It's not cut and dry, hey, like the maps you were seeing all week, hey, we all get snow. It is much more complicated than that. Why? Because it's Kentucky, and that's just how it works around here. We'll talk about all the reasons why coming up. So we are 2 and 3 days out. Here's what we are talking about. And you notice I've got it underlined. It is a major winter storm that is coming. I mean, this is a big deal event. There are going to likely be disruptions to normal life, more than probably a day. And so that's something to bear into account. So that means you begin preparations. You've got 3 days, 2.5 with Thursday now. Thursday, Friday, and I don't think it starts until maybe midday Saturday. It may start a little sooner than that, but that's what I've got going right now. So begin preparations. Just have your winter gear ready to go. Make sure that your pets are secured and taken care of. Make sure you're taken care of. And at this point, with the big picture stuff, it's qualitative, not quantitative. We aren't giving you numbers, but we're saying that, hey, this is a big deal. Looks like the chat's not working. So we've got folks there, but I've just got that one message from Sandy there at the beginning. So sorry about that. Maybe it pop in, maybe nobody's actually watching, although it shows me a 1,500. So again, there's your big picture stuff. What do we know? This is centered on Saturday night. It begins as early as it could begin in the pre-dawn of Saturday, but I think it may be closer to noon. Then begins to increase through Saturday. Saturday night is when we should be seeing the bulk of what's going to happen, and then it tapers off on Sunday. There's going to be just an absolutely prodigious amount of moisture. When we're talking about that's something called QPF, quantitative precipitation forecast. If you were to take all of it, melt it down, anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of stuff. That's the liquid equivalent. So if you are taking that at 10 to 1 on the ratio, you're talking foot of snow. If you are looking at that going into Arctic air, you start increasing the ratio. So it could end up being more than that. That's a possibility just because there's so much stuff. And what we're also knowing about is the Arctic cold that is going to follow. And if we do put that good snow cover on the ground, there are going to be several nights that go below zero next week. So with that, what we don't know the storm path. We don't know how completely this is going to come out. The overall thinking, I think, has changed from the monolithic look of snow that everybody was touting earlier in the week, that we've got a cutter coming in. And that is the complicating factor that we always see in Kentucky. We don't know the ratios of snow compared to ice and sleet at any given spot. That will affect the numbers. If you do several hours of heavy sleet, your snow accumulation goes way down. It still is a mess, but it goes way down, and everybody's worried about what they measure in their backyard. And we don't know where that transition line is going to be. I think it's going to be somewhere southeast of Lexington, from mostly snow to a decent percentage of freezing rain and sleet. Don't know where that's going to be yet, but again, I suspect across the southeast. So what's on the table? Heavy snow, freezing rain. By the way, you like the table? That's kind of cool. I found that buried in the system here. So yeah, both are on the table, and again, perhaps both in large amounts. Your winter storm watches cover, well, everywhere from eastern Arizona to southern Texas, all the way to Houston, almost to Atlanta. And then they're extending east as far as, Roanoke in Virginia. They don't go any further east because it's too far out in time. Even issuing the watch that they did for us is pushing the winter storm watch limit, where they would like to go on that. But you see, it gets up to the Ohio River. I think that's going to expand north a little bit. So here's how things look in the big picture of stuff that falls. And I know that's not the greatest color in the world for snow, but it really delineates it well from where the ice is likely to be. And so again, you see on the southern half, it's freezing rain, sleet, and to the north, it's snow. And again, there are going to be some ice storms out of this in multiple places, I think, that are ice storms for the ages. That may not be here, that may be down more toward middle Tennessee. You can see there, Mississippi, and then blue showing up, maybe the mountains of the Carolinas. So when we come in here again, you're seeing there's a transition line that's going to be around somewhere. At this point, it looks to be south of I-64, south of the Parkway, Bluegrass Parkway. But that's just where there is a mixture showing up, or ice, but there's going to be snow in there as well. On this particular graphic, just to clean it up, 4 inches is the cutoff that shows up. So that's 4 inches and more. 6 inches or more is probably a better number. And then we go from there. So again, this is a big deal system. So let's talk about why. And you can hear me plugging up again. So hopefully we'll get through this here fairly quickly. So again, our players haven't changed. It's the Arctic high that you see there. It is the low down here in Texas, and then you've got your inverted trough right there. The same players are in place. Interesting that the hurricane hunters actually went out to the Pacific and measured out there to try and get some better data on this to put into the computer modeling. So interesting. So again, the best case scenario for the fewest disruptions, as we talked about yesterday, the Arctic high bullies its way in, pushes everything south. This has now become the least likely scenario. It's not off the table, but it is now the least likely, as the trend has been strongly north over the last 24 hours or so. Best case for snow lovers, what you want to have is this low stay weak as it moves here along the Gulf Coast. And you want the inverted trough, it ran into the keyboard, you want the inverted trough to dominate. What that does, it's taking that tropical moisture feed, and this is coming from the tropical Pacific. So that's why we are pumping this much moisture into an Arctic high. And that's where your big snows can develop and all the other things that go along with it. So again, for the best snow, you want the low to be weak. Unfortunately, what the modeling has been showing, I don't know if I have that coming up here, but what it's been showing, instead of just the inverted trough, which shows up as isobars like that, it's closing off a low. And so now you have a system that will be cutting off, and we're going to take you now to the next one here, which is what none of us want to see. The worst case scenario, the low that you see here gets stronger. That means it'll have a closed isobar or two around it. That's what the modeling is starting to show, and when that happens, they love to come up on the west side of the mountains. That's what the modeling started showing yesterday. That's what happens here more often than not. climatologically, that is the favored scenario for a cutter to come up west of the mountains, then a secondary to reform out there around Cape Hatteras, and it turns into a nor'easter going up that way. That seems to be what's playing out at this point. Again, we're still a few days out, so we can't hone it in for sure. But what that low that comes up, what it does is it brings warm air aloft up with it. And so when you do that, you may have snow falling out of the cloud. It hits that warm layer and melts, turns into a water drop. Well, once it's a water drop, it can't turn back into a snowflake. If that cold air near the surface is thick, it freezes, turns into an ice pellet, sleet. If the cold air is thin, then it doesn't have a chance to freeze. It falls as a liquid raindrop and then spreads out, freezes, freezing rain. And so that is what we are looking at. I think some manner of that is what is going to be playing out for us as we look ahead here. So as we are, I think is that the last graphic I had? Let me see. That was the last graphic I had. Okay. So we have the winter storm watches up there. I think at this time tomorrow we can start putting some numbers on this, but they will be pretty broad at that point. Let me put the big picture stuff back on here for you. All right. So I'm not getting any questions through here, which I'm sorry about that. I've got Anthony saying, hey from Paint Lick, and Sandy saying, get well soon. So that's all I've got. So that gives you an idea of what we are looking at. You know, I'm hoping you're picking up, and it's hard to tell because I can barely talk at this point because I thought something like this, that this is a big deal. You know, this is a significant winter system. This is the kind that I think there will be disruptions for a couple of days, if not longer. The potential is certainly there. Can it still miss? Of course it can. You know, because we are still 3 days out. But I think that scenario is highly unlikely. I think we are looking at a major winter storm. I never understood bread and milk. But when I first heard about that, when I moved to South Carolina in the mid-'80s, kid fresh from the Midwest, and they said when it snows, they go buy bread and milk. And I never understood that. But Lee Cruz and I, once upon a time, did a funny little skit with that, which you can find on YouTube somewhere. So, again, be prepared for this. You know, we'll talk more as we get closer. We'll talk, obviously, tonight at 11. We'll be back on the Facebook Live tomorrow. We're going to try for 9 o'clock again. Hopefully everything works out okay tomorrow. And Friday, again, we'll do the same. And then we'll have to see how the weekend staffing plays out. But I suspect I will be here at some point, as will most everybody at the TV station, as this looks to be an all-hands-on-deck situation. So that's your setup. Again, we thank you for trusting us here. We thank you for viewing on our Facebook Live or the YouTube channel. Tell your friends, and we'll be back here tomorrow. And I'll find out why the chat wasn't working tonight. So again, my apologies on that. But again, I hope you get the weather you want. If you're wanting the big snow, I hope you get it. If you want to avoid the ice, I hope that happens for everyone. And we will talk on LEX 18 News at 11, and we will talk tomorrow on Facebook. Thanks for clicking on here, guys.